Jill Stein, the presumptive Green Party presidential nominee, has chosen a prominent human rights activist, that's Ajamu Baraka, to be her running mate. And we're learning in response to that, since I was not familiar with him previous to this, which says more about me than about him. We're learning more about who he is and what he stands for and what he could potentially bring to the ticket, so we want to give you some of that information. First, in a statement released by Jill Stein, she said, Ajamu Baraka is a powerful, eloquent spokesperson for the transformative, radical agenda whose time has come. An agenda of economic, social, racial, gender, climate, indigenous, and immigrant justice. And so she ticked off most of the important categories there. And so I think a lot of people will hear that, and they'll feel quite good about the pick. And they'll probably feel better once they hear about his career, his work in activism. We want to give you a little overview of that. Understand this is like 35 years of work condensed into a few sentences, but Baraka was the founding executive director of the U.S. Human Rights Network and coordinator of the Black Left Unity Network's Committee on International Affairs. He's also served on the boards of Amnesty International and the National Center for Human Rights Education. As well, I was glad to find out that he taught political science at Clark Atlanta University, Spelman College, and other academic institutions. And so it's both an activist and an academic that she's brought on board there. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no reason to question the pick. As a Bernie Sanders supporter, there's a few things that he has said in the past that I have a personal problem with. We're not going to go into all of it. I'm sure that if you're interested in the ticket, you will do your research as well. There's a lot of information online. But Baraka had previously described President Barack Obama as an Uncle Tom president and stated that Obama shows obsequious deference to white power. In my research, I came across references to the belief that the plane that was brought down in the Ukraine was a false flag, and that the solidarity after the Charlie Hebdo shootings was, I don't have the exact wording, I forget, but it was something like a parade of white power or something like that. Mm-hmm. So look, he is a radical. He's a true believer, and so in some cases that is going to lead to rhetoric that most people find uncomfortable. Sometimes that's exactly what's necessary. And she's right. He supports radical reform, which I think a lot of people around the country feel is overdue.
Yes. Look, the more information you have of all your options, the better. So you now know who her VP pick is. And I hope that another thing that everyone looks into before they vote for anyone, even if it's a protest vote, is what an individual's policies are, right? Mm-hmm. So I agree with Jill Stein on many things, but there are also other issues that I don't agree with her on. And I think a lot of people think of her as a hardcore progressive, a hardcore liberal, without really getting into the nitty-gritty of what the policy ideas are and whether or not those policy ideas make sense. Because, for instance, it's one thing to say, all student loan debt gone. I'm forgiving all of it. The country is $1.4 trillion in the hole for student loans, okay? So $1.4 trillion, just forgiving them is not a realistic solution. I'm just keeping it real. You guys know I care about that a great deal. Someone had tweeted me and said, well, we bailed out the auto companies, why not the students? We didn't bail out the auto companies to the tune of $1.4 trillion.
Yeah,
so it's a little different. Yeah.
But I do think that using that example, we should be as willing to bail out in a similar way students.
Yes.
And it could be that you need prominent voices pushing messages that realistically couldn't be put into effect, so that the compromise position might be something that is doable and would benefit millions and millions of Americans.
Look, I agree with you. There is nothing, I don't know why this is the case. I don't have student loan debt. I'm fine. I have my college degrees and I'm living my life, right? I care about student loan debt almost more than any other issue. I mean, money in politics is number one. But the reason why I care is because I hate to see the impact it's having on all these people who just wanted an opportunity and just wanted education. And I also hate the impact that it's going to have on our economy as a whole. People without student loan debt think, it's not going to affect me. You know, I didn't get that liberal arts degree. It is going to affect you. It has a huge impact when our middle class is saddled with a tremendous amount of debt.
That's true, yeah.
And they can't participate in the economy. And then there was the story today about how she was quoted as saying that Wi-Fi shouldn't be allowed on school campuses because it could negatively impact students' brains. So, by the way, I'm paraphrasing what she said. I'm not quoting her directly. Those are all things that you should keep in mind. I get it. People hate Hillary Clinton. I also dislike Hillary Clinton quite a bit, okay? I despise Trump. I feel like we're in a tough situation. And I get that people want to cast a protest vote and they want to support a candidate that they identify with more than, you know, the two front runners that we have right now, or the two main candidates that we have right now. I'm just asking, as I do with every other candidate, look into the policy ideas and make sure you know who you're casting a ballot for. Be an empowered voter. Equip yourself with all the information necessary to make a smart decision. That's it.
And look, when it comes to Ajamu Baraka, I know the work he's done for different organizations. I don't know, I can't list a long list of actual policies that he's in support of. I'm still doing the early research. But I think on most of those policies, I think especially our viewers will find that this to be a reassuring pick. It shows a commitment to activism and to someone who's outspoken and in a ticket that's going to need to work to get coverage. That's certainly not a bad thing. One other quote that bothered me personally as a Bernie Sanders supporter was in February 2016, Baraka referred to Senator Bernie Sanders as media-driven pseudo-opposition controlled by dominant forces with an interest in keeping us all stupid.
Yeah, I'm done.
I had a problem with that.
That was February of 2016. That wasn't in like the 1980s where he's like, oh, I'm a changed man. No, that's unacceptable.
There's a way that you could mean that where you're like, you could say Bernie Sanders is trying to do the best he can, but the DNC puts pressure and makes it almost impossible. You could say that, I think. I don't like the interest in keeping us stupid. But there were some other people that she considered. We talked earlier about the possibility of her bringing former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner on, which, considering the controversy at the DNC, would have certainly been timely, but she said the conditions were not right at this point for a combined run. She also considered author and foreign correspondent Chris Hedges, who had a great debate online with Robert Reich recently, which you should look up. Green Party Senate candidate Margaret Flowers, activist Kevin Zeese of popularresistance.org, and former Black Panther Party leader Aaron Dixon. And so, look, keeping it real, I've been following the polls, and Jill Stein, assuming that she is the nominee, which looks almost certainly like it's going to be the case, is still somewhere between 3 and 5%, which at this point falls below the level of being able to be on the debate stage. But it's not impossible. Polls do fluctuate quite a bit in the weeks following the conventions. I'm not going to lie. I find it difficult to believe that she'll end up hitting the 15%, but it's not impossible. And if so, that will certainly make the debates more lively.
And look,
and a wider range
we treat her as a serious candidate, which is why we are telling you what the pros and cons are of her platform. And so do with that information what you will. But just because she's the underdog and just because a lot of people hate Hillary Clinton doesn't mean that, you know, we're going to play softball and pretend like all of her policies make sense. I know a lot of people probably don't like the straight talk right now, but it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. I think to remind people the fact that you can support someone and still be critical of them, we should occasionally play a game where we literally just list the shitty things about every candidate in turn. That would be a fun game.
Sure.
But anyway, also for Johnson fans, Libertarian candidate, I saw today that he had qualified for access to the Hawaii ballot. I'd read previously that it's expected that he will end up on almost all of them. I checked in recently. I believe it's the most updated information on Jill Stein, and it looks like she's already qualified for over half of state ballots. There's a couple where it will be limited to write-ins, and then there are a good number of the rest of the states where it's filed and she still doesn't know if she's going to be on the ballot for it. But just if you are planning on supporting her, I would definitely check now to see what level of ballot access she has in your particular state.
Yes, good point. And just to bring everything full circle, out of all the candidates, including Jill Stein, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Gary Johnson's the only one who is supporting TPP publicly. Now, Hillary Clinton probably supports it too, but she claims that she doesn't anymore. But yeah, Gary Johnson is the only one who's like, yep, support TPP. Not even gonna hide it.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I looked into that today.
That's interesting.
He's a libertarian.
I know.
He's a libertarian. People forget. People are like, yeah, third party, go. And then they forget to look into their policy ideas. Please, please.